New technologies. Over a timescale of months, the business empire controlled by the megas started gaining a foothold in ever more areas of the world economy, thanks to superhuman planning by Prometheus. By carefully analysing the world's data, it had already during its first week presented the megas with a detailed step-by-step growth plan, and it kept improving and refining this plan as its data and computer resources grew. Although Prometheus was far from omniscient, its capabilities were now so far beyond human that the Omegas viewed it as a perfect oracle, dutifully providing brilliant answers and advice in response to all their questions. Prometheus' software is now highly optimized to make the most of the rather mediocre human-invented hardware it ran on, and as the Omegas had anticipated, Prometheus identified ways of dramatically improving this hardware. Fearing a breakout, they refused to build robotic construction facilities that Prometheus could control directly. Instead, they hired large numbers of world-class scientists and engineers in multiple locations and fed them internal research reports written by Prometheus, pretending that they were from researchers at the other sites. These reports detailed novel physical effects and manufacturing techniques that the engineers soon tested, understood, and mastered. Normal human research and development, R&D cycles, of course, take years, in large part because they involve many slow cycles of trial and error. The current situation was very different. Prometheus already had the next steps figured out, so the limiting factor was simply how rapidly people could be guided to understand and build the right things. A good teacher can help students learn science much faster than they could have discovered it from scratch on their own, and Prometheus surreptitiously did the same with these researchers. Since Prometheus could accurately predict how long it would take humans to understand and build things given various tools, it developed the quickest possible path forward, giving priority to new tools that could be quickly understood and built and that were useful for developing more advanced tools. In the spirit of the maker movement, the engineering teams were encouraged to use their own machines to build their better machines. This self-sufficiency not only saved money, but also made them less vulnerable to future threats from the outside world. Within 2 years, they were producing much better computer hardware than the world had ever known. To avoid helping outside competition, they kept this technology under wraps and used it only to upgrade Prometheus. What the world didn't notice, however, was an astonishing tech boom. Upstart companies around the world were launching revolutionary new products in almost all areas. A South Korean startup launched a new battery that stored twice as much energy as your laptop battery in half the mass and could be charged in under a minute. A Finnish firm released a cheap solar panel with twice the efficiency of the best competitors. A German company announced a new type of mass-producible wire that was superconducting at room temperature, revolutionizing the energy sector. The Boston-based biotech group announced a phase 2 clinical trial of what they claimed was the first effective, side-effect-free weight loss drug, while rumours suggested that an Indian outfit was already selling something similar on the black market. A California company countered with a phase 2 trial of a blockbuster cancer drug which caused the body's immune system to identify and attack cells with any of the most common cancerous mutations. Examples just kept on coming, triggering talk of a new golden age for science. Last but not least, robotics companies were cropping up like mushrooms all around the world. None of the bots came close to matching human intelligence, and most of them looked nothing like humans. But they dramatically disrupted the economy, and over the years to come, they gradually replaced most of the workers in manufacturing, transportation, warehousing, retail, construction, mining, agriculture, forestry, and fishing. What the world didn't notice, thanks to the hard work of a crack team of lawyers, was that all these firms were controlled with a series of intermediaries by the Omegas. Prometheus was flooding the world's patent offices with sensational inventions via various proxies, and these inventions gradually led to domination in all areas of technology. Although these disruptive new companies made powerful enemies among their competition, they made even more powerful friends. They were exceptionally profitable, and under slogans such as investing in our community, they spent a significant fraction of these profits hiring people for community projects, often the same people who had been laid off from the companies that were disrupted. They used detailed Prometheus-produced analyses identifying jobs that would be maximally rewarding for the employees and the community for the least cost, tailored to the local circumstances. In regions with high levels of government service, this often focused on community building, culture, and caregiving, while in poorer regions it also included launching and maintaining schools, healthcare, daycare, elder care, affordable housing, parks, and basic infrastructure. Pretty much everywhere, locals agreed that these were things that should have been done long ago. Local politicians got generous donations, and care was taken to make them look good for encouraging their corporate community investments. Gaining power. The Omegas had launched a media company not only to finance their early tech ventures, but also for the next step of their audacious plan, taking over the world. Within a year of the first launch, they had added remarkably good news channels to their lineup all over the world. As opposed to their other channels, these were deliberately designed to lose money and were pitched as a public service. In fact, their news channels generated no income whatsoever. They carried no ads that were viewable free of charge by anyone with an internet connection. The rest of their media empire was such a cash-generating machine that they could spend far more resources on their news service than any other journalistic effort had done in world history, and it showed. Through aggressive recruitment with highly competitive salaries of journalists and investigative reporters, they brought remarkable talent and findings to the screen. Through a global web service that paid anybody who revealed something newsworthy, from local corruption to a heartwarming event, they were usually the first to break the story. At least that's what people believed. In fact, they were often first because stories attributed to citizen journalists had been discovered by Prometheus via real-time monitoring of the internet. All these video news sites featured podcasts and print articles as well. Phase 1 of their news strategy was gaining people's trust, which they did with great success. Their unprecedented willingness to lose money enabled remarkably diligent regional and local news coverage, where investigative journalists often exposed scandals that truly engaged their viewers. Whenever a country was strongly divided politically and accustomed to partisan news, they would launch one news channel catering to each faction, ostensibly owned by different companies, and gradually gain the trust of that faction. Where possible, they accomplished this using proxies to buy the most influential existing channels, gradually improving them by removing ads and introducing their own content. In countries where censorship and political interference threatened these efforts, they would initially acquiesce in whatever the government required them to stay in business, with the secret internal slogan, "The truth, nothing but the truth, but maybe not the whole truth." Prometheus usually provided excellent advice in such situations, clarifying which politicians needed to be presented in a good light and which, usually corrupt local ones, could be exposed. Prometheus would also provide invaluable recommendations for what strings to pull, whom to bribe, and how best to do so. The strategy was a smashing success around the world, with the Omega-controlled channels emerging as the most trusted news sources. Even in countries where governments had thus far thwarted their mass adoption, they were built a reputation for trustworthiness, and many of their news stories percolated through the grapevine. Competing news executives felt that they were fighting a hopeless battle. How can you possibly make a profit competing with someone with better funding who gives their products away for free? With their viewership dropping, ever more networks decided to sell their news channels, usually to some consortium that later turned out to be controlled by the Omegas. About 2 years after Prometheus's launch, when the trust-gaining phase was largely completed, the Omegas launched Phase 2 of their news strategy, persuasion. Even before this, astute observers had noticed hints of a political agenda behind the new media. There seemed to be a gentle push toward the centre, away from extremism of all sorts. Their plethora of news channels catering to different groups still reflected animosity between the United States and Russia, India and Pakistan, different religion, political factions and so on, but the criticism was slightly toned down, usually focusing on concrete issues involving money and power, rather than ad hominem attacks, scaremongering, and poorly substantiated rumours. Once Phase 2 started in earnest, this push to diffuse old conflicts became more apparent, with frequent touching stories about the plight of traditional adversaries mixed with investigative reporting about how many local conflict mongers were driven by personal profit motives.